Hi, everybody. It's Bob Ost, and welcome to Theater Resources Unlimited's TRU Community Gathering, also sometimes known in the podcast world as TRU Talks About Theater. Theater Resources is a company that was founded by me like 30 years ago, basically to help people understand and navigate the business of theater. So we're basically help producers, and we also help artists understand the business side of things as well. I've been doing this since April 17th, 2020. We've always been a New York-based company, and we've always done everything live. And I had no idea what virtual even meant. I think there was a time where I didn't even know what streaming meant, let alone Zoom. But we realized in March of 2020 that something had to change. We had to adjust. We had to adapt because something happened, and I think you all know what it was. I dare not name it. And we went into shutdown, and we were all kind of faced with, what do we do now? I mean, I remember being faced with shutdown. They don't really mean quarantine, do they? It's not a real quarantine. We can get around that, right? No? Finally, when I sort of just accepted the fact that we were all quarantined, I realized that I had to actually start looking at something called Zoom and virtual and create a room here so that people could come together and be a community even during shutdown. So that was April 17th, 2020 when I started this. So this is now, I think, the 195th consecutive week of doing these gatherings with everybody. Interesting gifts came of COVID. One of them was because I went virtual, I suddenly had an international audience, which I never thought was remotely possible. But even today, we have somebody here from Australia, and we have people from the West Coast, and we have people from all over. In fact, generally speaking, week after week, I tend to have more people from outside of New York than we have from New York itself. So we're no longer a New York-centric company. We're suddenly out there, and we have COVID and virtual and Zoom and all that to thank for it. So we learned a lot. Hopefully we learned a lot during the 3.5. We're actually coming to our fourth anniversary, our 4th year anniversary since shutdown. We learned a lot, and one of the things that we learned was that it was possible to be creative during a quarantine, during a shutdown. It was possible to find ways to create theater and make things happen. And I kind of, at this point, I've embraced the tools that have been shared with us by the universe and by the people that actually know how to do things virtually. And I kind of like the options of being able to do presentations virtually as well as live and in person. I also like not having to book a venue and fight to get space so that I can actually have something happen live, and also be locked into that time frame. With virtual, there's so much flexibility. I mean, we can target a date, but if something goes wrong, we have no problem postponing it a week or postponing it 2 weeks. It's a whole different thing. From my nerves, thank you. My nerves are very grateful for all of this because it's a little less nerve-wracking, believe it or not, than producing things live. So today we're going to talk about all that. We're going to talk about the options that have been opened up to us by actually embracing and becoming familiar with Zoom and virtual presentation. I'm going to actually bring my guests into the room. Hello, come back screen. Thank you. All right, so here we are. I'm going to do a little housekeeping here. I want you to meet some of the people that are involved right now with our TRU Voices play reading series. I had the option of doing a live reading series for the first time. I didn't think it was an option last year. I knew it was an option this year. But I like the challenge that I throw to people when I say, let's do your play written for stage, written for live performance. Let's do it as a virtual presentation. These are readings. right now. The True Voices play readings are we're in the third of our three coming up this Sunday, the 25th, February 25th. But I like very much what we've done, and I'm very proud of what we've done. We've done a couple of interesting things, and before I start talking about the series itself, I want you to meet my cast of characters, my guests today. I'm going to ask you to introduce yourselves and tell us a little bit about who you are, what you do, and what your role has been in True Voices. And I'm going to start with Iben. Iben, introduce yourself.
Thank you. Well, I've become the octopus of True Voices, I guess is the right way. The person to go to with any technical stuff, any how do we do this? And I am so incredibly proud of all three teams. Going from a live broadcast with 2 to a live broadcast with 10 actors to in a vented room that was not preset. So we had streaming musicals and Mill Iron come in and basically roll in the crates with all the equipment and set it up in 3 hours. It was just amazing. To a beautifully filmed and produced, edited piece that we're going to see on Sunday. So it's just amazing what can be done. And I think once you add technology, and I do have a background in technology, so I'm kind of biased that way, it is, you know, it needs to be considered what that brings to the table rather than what it takes away.
And we'll have I'm open to other opinions about that, but I tend to agree with you. I think it's given us more than it's taken away, but not everybody may agree with that. And we're going to come back to what you were talking about with the differences between the three differences. I think it's grammatically differences among the three different shows. I wanted to go into that in more detail so people can actually grasp it, because today I really want people to understand what some of these choices are. John Ewing.
Yes, my name is John Ewing III. I've been a part of Theater Resources Unlimited for about a year. I've had the opportunity to take the PDMP Masterclass with Blair Russell, and as well as the Masterclass with Jane Dubin.
Foundations with Blair Russell. Jane's in the room. I have to say this. Foundations with Foundations with Blair Russell. Masterclass with Jane Dubin.
Yeah, both of the courses are very incredible. My experience comes from concerts and film. And it was a pleasure to be a part of the True Voices program, to get the opportunity to produce a show, got the opportunity to work with Scott and Chris, and do something very creative, and learned a lot from it. So that's pretty much it for me.
Well, we'll come back and we'll ask you some more probing questions later. But let's move on to since we just talked about you and being the first play, let's continue with the first play. Let's go to Christopher Scott. Again, this was 1920. We presented this 2 Sundays ago, and Christopher is the director. It needs to. There it goes.
Hi, everybody. I'm Christopher Scott. I was the director on Scott Sublett's play 1920 that John produced, and it was a really exciting experience, especially to work in, as I call it, the Playhouse 90 format. I like to harken back to the days of live TV. It's kind of the way I approach it. Just basically me. I currently am a director, of course, and a teacher. I teach at many different places, especially a lot at Baruch College. I've worked there a lot, and I know Kate works with you. Kate Camarada works there with me, and I was an actor for a long time ago in the last century, and I moved into being a director, and because I love telling people what to do, as I like to say. And that's me, and I'll talk more about the process of the live stream that we did as we go along. But I'm just really happy to be here and proud to have worked with Scott and John on that, and very happy that I was able to work with you, True. So thank you.
Well, we were very happy to have you. I thought, I want to just second what Iben said, that we're very, very proud of all three of the plays. I think that all three were done in slightly different ways, and I think it's really good to know how many options we have when we decide that we want to get a reading of our play. It's just good to have these options. We're going to move to play number 2, which was last weekend. It was Rolling with the Punches, and Joel Bailey, the writer, is here, and Nicolette Blount, the producer, is here. So let's start with the writer, Joel.
Hi.
The only one brave enough to come on the panel today. The only writer brave enough.
Well, I'll just give you my overall impression, and then we can go into it a little bit deeper later. But I had the opportunity to work with Nicolette Blount and Kennedy Shawn, and they were amazing. And Ben Rausch, the director, was absolutely wonderful. It was a bit of a roller coaster ride at times, but one that I thoroughly enjoyed and one that I feel is really, truly worth it. So glad to be here.
Thanks, Joel. And Nicolette, a little bit about your background.
Chokma, my name is Nicolette Blount. I am a Chickasaw writer, composer, lyricist, and producer. I produce with my LLC company, Take My Shot Productions. I'm a co-producer on a commercial jingle for Regina Comet, In Pieces, an investor for Museum of Broadway. My show, Savage the Musical, is a semifinalist for the Eugene O'Neill this year. And I'm also a fellow with the Dramatists Guild Foundation's Musical Theater Fellowship, and I started nativetheaterartist.com.
Okay. Nativetheaterartist.com we should really know more about, but yes, thank you for that. Susan, you're the only one who hasn't had the show up yet, so you're here complete with nerves, knowing that Sunday is going to be the actual presentation. These guys can be a little calmer because they've already done it, but yours is coming up on Sunday.
Yeah,
so tell us a little bit.
We've been in such good hands. I mean, shout out to Iben. She's just been amazing in terms of supporting us. I'm Susan Griffin. I'm the founder of a company called Wayward Creatives Entertainment. We basically help incubate new work and really get things kind of off the ground. The play that we're presenting on Sunday is a play by Stephen Kaplan. It's called Un Hombre, a Golem Story. I am a huge fangirl of Stephen Kaplan. I've had the privilege of producing other work of his for virtual readings. And this came to me actually from Stephen. Stephen, again, a shout out to the play. What do you call it? The speed date? The speed date. So I believe that Stephen's first introduction to TRU was through the speed date. And then I think he submitted Un Hombre to the reading series. And when Un Hombre was selected, he was in need of a producer. And Jane Dubin wasn't available. So, no, I'm joking. But Stephen reached out to me because we'd had experience before, and specifically producing a virtual piece. So it just seemed like a natural thing. And I think I'm echoing everything that everybody else has said, but it's a great opportunity, and we thank TRU for essentially allowing us to be part of the reading series and to enable Un Hombre to be seen. It's not the premiere. Un Hombre has actually had some exposure through somewhat other developmental programs, but it's still early days, and it's wonderful to have the opportunity to get a piece up on its feet and hear it and essentially see it, even if it's being seen in our case through the magic of Zoom. Not really Zoom, but Zoom-like.
I mean, Zoom is like Kleenex. It's like you mean tissues.
Exactly.
But
Exactly.
you say
It's
Kleenex.
totally right.
Yeah.
We can get into technically how we did it, and why we chose how we did it. But essentially, unlike the other two plays, we recorded it virtually, edited the bejesus out of it, and beautifully, if I might speak to our editor. And
Yay, Chris.
yeah, Chris Chan Roberson, a ninja. But we started with a piece that, you know, the bones of Stephen's piece are just so solid that, you know, we had good material to work with.
So I'm going to give a little background on TRU Voices because everybody in this room probably knows, except for a couple people, know what I'm going to be talking about. But my YouTube listeners may not know. Because we're a producers organization, one of the things that we do with our play reading series and in general, we always try to make sure there's a producer component. Our mission is really about nurturing and developing producers for theater, because honestly, without producers, nothing happens. So they're very important to us. So with our play reading series, we encourage writers to submit with a producer attached. And I have to confess that when we get the submissions, maybe 1% or 2% of all the submissions have a producer attached, which means that if a play gets read, it gets read by three readers, and if it makes it into finals, guess who has to find them a producer usually? So we're set up with the assumption that we will find you a producer if you don't have one. But in Stephen's case, Stephen immediately said, you know, I know Susan Griffin. I'm gonna ask. He didn't say by name, but he said, I have this woman that I've worked with. I'm gonna ask her. And so it also, writers out there, it also gives you a talking point to connect with the producer that might have been doing a dance with for like a couple of years. One day we'll work together. One day you can go up to them and say, TRU's paying all the bills, so you want to be my producer. So,
well, let me also interject, Bob, that we also had a really unique opportunity because, yes, I took on the role as primary producer, but there's a young woman named Nima McCullough who had gone through one of the programs, the PDMP program.
I'll say it. Nobody else can. Producer Development and Mentorship Program.
Right. So she had gone through the program, but like many people, and I started here as well, right? We think, gosh, the business of Broadway could be really, really great. I would love to get involved. You take courses like the TRU program, but then you need hands-on experience. So Nima didn't feel comfortable to take on the producer role, but she wanted to be an associate producer. And, you know, to have your first hands-on experience, being in the room where it happens, seeing all the things, you know, all the details that need to be attended to, I think for TRU to be able to give the graduates of the TRU programs these opportunities to really get your hands dirty, I think that's exceptional. So good on you guys for doing that.
Thank you. Since we're on that, I mean, I see John has his hand raised, so I don't have to say what I was going to say, but I want to bring Nicolette into it in a second. But John, yes, with your raised hand.
I just wanted to add what you were saying about you know, having projects attached to producers. That's the great thing I think about TRU Voices, that it not only gives an opportunity to the playwrights to have their work read, but also, you know, it presents an opportunity for producers as well. You know, so if you're coming from a different field of work, like myself, with concerts and films, I had only done table reads for film, and any type of Zoom read was just, you know, artists in different locations across the country just reading the project. So Christopher Scott, our director, he really had quite a bit of experience. So initially, our first conversation with Scott and myself was, you know, should we put the actors in the same place? And instantly, Christopher, with his experience, he said that we absolutely have to have the actors in the same place. So, with having someone with the experience of Chris, pretty much running a point, it really worked out perfectly. So I just wanted to add that it not only provides an opportunity to the playwrights, but producers as well. And once you've already done it, then it's just a rinse and repeat, and you can just do it all over again.
If only it were that easy, but yeah. I want to actually pull on another thread that is kind of dangling right now. John and Nicolette are both graduates of the producer development and mentorship program that Susan was talking about, and they both had the confidence to come in and say, I want to produce one of these plays. So that worked very well. And the relationship that Susan and Stephen have is just another example of basically, I consider myself a dating service for producers. I do speed dates. I make matches. That's basically been my whole 30 years of running TRU, is just making matches and bringing people together. John, thank you for what you were saying about your choices that you had to make with Christopher at the start. And we're going to get into a little bit of that too, but I want to go back to the thread of Nicolette, your relationship with Kennedy.
Well, so after I read the play, which I was very touched by, because it touches on a disabled story, and I have a disabled daughter. So after I read it, I contacted Bob and I said I would love to be considered as a producer for this. And he said, well, there's another person who wanted to be a producer of another play, and it fell through or something. And so he said, would you be willing to work with Kennedy? And I said, sure. Like, I don't know how that's going to work because she lives in Texas and I live in Massachusetts, but I'm able to travel to New York, which I do a lot. But I was more than willing to figure that out. And it so happens that Kennedy knows the director I've worked with for years with Savage. And so it was this weird, like, we all are in this little circle, but didn't know it. And actually Kennedy has been great to work with because she is the queen of Google Sheets, Google Docs, Google, every organization thing you can think of on Google. She's the master. So she's like, I'm going to make a sheet for that. I'm going to make a doc for that. I was like, great, go ahead. So like, she was very helpful in organizing when I was just like really, really crazy busy with everything else.
One of the most terrifying things to artists who I suggest might want to start self-producing or knowing more about the business, the most terrifying thing is thinking in spreadsheets. They basically, it's like, no, don't expose me to Excel, please.
Yeah,
anything but that.
Yeah.
But
so she's really great, and she and I have a lot in common, so it's created kind of a relationship that maybe we'll do something else together.
Oh, that's great to hear. Thank you. So let's see. I want to let's talk with Iben for a second about the first choice that TRU made that led to where we actually went, was that originally we were going to be doing this, as we have done in years past, with onthestage.com, which is a platform that is available to people that want to do readings. They're also a ticketing service and a marketing service for live productions as well. I want everybody to know that in case you want to have that on your list as a resource. So Iben and I assumed we assumed we're going to be doing this with onthestage.com. Excuse me. And the rep there said, oh, everything's the same as it was last year and the year before. And then we get into a conversation with them. Iben gets on with me and with the people from On the Stage. Only one thing changed. One little thing changed. They no longer could do live broadcasts. So that was kind of troublesome for us, because we had offered to Susan and Nicolette and John, the three producers, the option of doing live broadcast, a Zoom reading, a filmed reading that you can actually make all sorts of film magic happen in post-production. Whatever they wanted creatively to do, we wanted to offer them. And suddenly the rug was just pulled out from under us. So even remember that wonderful moment?
I do. I mean, we were literally, I think, Chris, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think we were not even 2 weeks out of when you were supposed to have your performance. And we called the meeting and said, listen, this is not going to happen because I can't do this. But thankfully, Streaming Musical stepped up and said, okay, we can actually do that. So it was just, okay. It seemed like full stream ahead with 1920. And it was an easy choice because it was a 2 people play.
I have a question. I have a
And
question for you because I don't know this, and this is to Chris too, and to John. Was there a moment where we actually said to you, "Oh my God, I don't think you can do a live broadcast"? You wanted did we ever tell you that we had that problem, or did we try to keep that from you?
I think you kept that from us.
Okay, that's what I
Oh,
thought.
Lordy.
I thought basically, so
smart.
behind the scenes, so you guys have to know that behind the scenes, Iben and I were tearing our hair out. You wouldn't know it to look at me, but we were tearing our hair out and thinking, "Oh my God, what are we going to do?" And Tom Pullum, who has streaming musicals, used to be the chairman of the board of TRU, so we have a little bit of a relationship. And I went to him and I said, "Tom, can you help?" And he was like thrilled because he had actually thought about partnering with us, and he's got this whole thing that he wants to do with streaming musicals, which is a reading series, and it was exactly what he wanted to hear from us. It's a yes, 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 we'll do it. So
and
that solved
initially
that problem.
we thought it was going to be a live capture situation, that we would, capture it and do some light editing and then stream it out. So not live broadcast.
So
And
let me put an underline for that for everybody in the room who it may run together in your head. Live broadcast means that you're actually seeing the play performed live and it's being broadcast. It's like what somebody was saying. I think Chris was saying what was the old TV show you
Playhouse
mentioned?
90.
Playhouse 90. Yes, it was Playhouse 90. So we were suddenly doing Playhouse 90, like, and thrilled and very thrilled and very excited about it. Tom, meanwhile, is saying, "I don't know anybody who's ever live broadcast a reading before." Now, I don't know if that's true, but apparently it's not very common. It's pretty unusual to do it. But I think, have just established a precedent. I think everybody should think about it as being an option. So back to you, Iben.
no, I mean, that's exactly what it was, because we couldn't get both the actors and all the players for 1920. We couldn't get them there in time. So there was time for the light editing and the capture and all of that. And then, just to make it really interesting, about 4 or 5 days before, we knew that we were going to be the first people into a new studio that we're going to have. The guy, Tom, calls me or texts me actually Sunday night and said, "Okay, we have a bit of a problem. Do you want to hear about it now, or do you want to hear about it Monday?" And like, call me now, figuring out what that little bit of problem was. And it turned out that they did not get the studio on the planned date. They did not have the whole move in on the planned date. Basically, the whole thing needed to be completely redone because of the prior renters. So it was like, okay, we can deal with that. And they then got a second room on 7th floor instead of on 7th floor instead of 2nd floor, and it was much smaller.
I want to make sure I want to make sure everybody's getting this. So what Iben is saying is that they were supposed to move into their new studio. They're moving from an old studio to a new studio. The timing was going to be just perfect with us because they're moving just when we would be needing to film this. No problem, no problem. So then she gets a call saying the landlords got confused. They didn't know we were moving in February 1st. They have us moving in February 17th. So what happened then, what Iben was trying to explain, was they had to create an entire studio on the 7th floor, which was not going to
Literally
be there
just for 1920.
just for your play, Chris
Yeah.
and John.
And
you
turned
had
out
your very own
beautiful.
studio. You had your very own customized studio, guys. How did that feel? Okay. John?
Felt great. I will add that one thing that gave me a little anxiety was the fact that they were moving and we couldn't look at what the setup was. But it turned out great. They were magnificent with the 8-camera setup. It really worked out really well.
8-camera setup. 8-camera setup. I just couldn't get over it.
But one of them we couldn't use because it kept flickering.
Oh, I didn't know
We
that. So it
could
was
not use, no,
oh
I
my
mean,
God, it was only a 7-camera
yes,
setup.
it was only a 7-camera thing. And that was the one that was meant to give us a certain view that way, and it didn't do it. And I kept
Oh.
saying, this is the best setup. I said, yeah, but it keeps flickering. Turned out that again, that's why we have to do tech, is that the cable that connected the camera to this live switcher was overheating.
Okay, all of you playwrights, chew on that. The cable was overheating, guys. So let's move to the third play, because I think this is a combo platter today. It's basically we're talking about the amazing opportunities offered by virtual, but we're also talking about the backstage traumas that we survived. So Nicolette, you have a story too.
I mean, we had a really big cast, like 10 actors plus a stage reader, so that would be 11. And we had been told that they were going to be moving, and we needed to, and because we had 2 wheelchair users, we had someone who has leg braces, has, I believe, cerebral palsy. And so we really need to make sure that it was ADA accessible. And they didn't know if their new space was going to be ADA accessible until like a week and a half before we were filming, maybe 2. I don't think it was 2. I think it was like a week and a half. And we had planned to like film, and originally we weren't going to do live capture broadcasts or live broadcasts, but then we ended up doing that. So we were rushing around trying to find an ADA compliant space. And then they were going to bring all their stuff in and still do the live broadcast, but in a space that hopefully was going to be big enough for us, and hopefully had good enough Wi-Fi, and hopefully all the things.
Let me just say that, but they also knew at that point that they weren't going to be able to bring 8 cameras in. You basically planned it, you plotted it in a way so that you figured that you could use 4. I think it was 4 cameras you used, right?
We ended up using 4, but initial plan was having 3. So the 4th, and that 4th one was actually operated as well. So which neither of the cameras for 1920 was. And when you have an operated camera, you can zoom and change the angle of what people are seeing that you can't. The other one, the only way you can do that is by switching from another preset camera. So we had different technical challenges, but I'm amazed about that it all actually happened.
And just so everyone knows, Pearl Studios is ADA compliant. So that was a gem for us. They even had, when I went to the front desk person, I said, hey, I know there's a bigger bathroom in the bathroom, but it still doesn't look big enough for a wheelchair. And they went, oh, we're going to give you a special code to this other bathroom, which is like this huge private bathroom. And it was great. I would say the only things in regard to that is like the hump going up into, or the tiny little ramp into the doorway was a little bit hard for the wheelchair users, and we just assisted them when they needed help with that. But otherwise it was great. And the room luckily was big enough for what we needed. We kind of had to guess that. And Ben was our switcher. He was our director, Ben Rouse.
Yeah.
And so he also did the switching. He did a great job.
So just Nicolette, just tell us briefly, how did you come to make the decision of how you wanted to present? How did we come to the conclusion that it was going to be a live broadcast? I mean, it may be obvious, but just
Iben, do you
state it.
remember that?
I
Everything
called
is
them
like a
and
blur
said,
now.
I have a panic meeting. You have to come here and we have to do it this way. And
Oh, so you told them what to do.
yes, because
Like I said,
there
you
was
always have choices,
not-
everyone.
They had no
there was
time.
no other option if we were going to do it. We ran out of time. That's part of what Chris and John also was facing with 1920, being the earlier ones in the series, is that if you want to capture something and then edit it, Susan can talk to that, but when you want to capture something and then edit it afterwards, you need to have that time to do that too, because otherwise it's going to look like a pile of something that we don't want to talk about. So basically, it's about making sure that it's the audience experience. That's what I kept focusing on. So I think we can do it. I had all the key players in the room. So that was the second crisis meeting with the Rolling with the Punches team, and they all rose to it. It just like, yes, okay, we can do this. They did not. There was a time when Nicolette said to me, I'm getting a stomach ache now. I'm nervous. Do you remember that?
Like I said, it's all a blur. It's all a blur. I literally had to do 2 days where I did nothing afterwards. Because
I just want to say to the room, if things aren't clear, because we're throwing a lot of information out at you, and if things aren't clear, put a Q in the chat and say what it is you'd like to have clarified. If you want to make a comment, also put a Q and put the comment in, and Jay will call our attention to any questions that are in the chat, because I think we're all having a good time just talking about all of it. And there's a lot of stuff that's coming up. I want to get to Susan in a minute, but I want to come back to Christopher and say, why did you make the decision to do a live broadcast?
I think what was apparent to me after doing all these Zoom things was that the magic of what happens between two actors that is very hard to recreate in any kind of, when they're in separate spaces, and it's very flat, and we all know actually Zoom flattens everything out anyway. So it was very important, and actually, if we had a little more time, I would have had some more people in the room watching it, because I know we were really tight on space, not to have an audience reaction, but to have the other bodies there for the actors. It was a small space, so it was good because there was Scott, myself, and John, and Maggie, our reader, at least gave them something, some energy, because I think that's really important. I think it really translates to the screen. Because I'm just as an artist, I'm so aware of bad editing on movies, and the magic that happens in real time is something that is very hard to recreate. And I think that it can start to transcend these small screens. And it was, I must say, the setup that they had, because of so many cameras, and even you were talking about, since we didn't have anybody operating one camera where we could do close-ups, those were all kind of set. So I think that setup helps with the ability to do that. But I think
the other thing I want everybody to understand in the room is that some of the cameras are specifically designed so that they do a slight movement. So there's a flow. Everything in 1920 had a flow to it. When you went from one camera to the other, it wasn't just a quick blump. It was like a little transitional thing that was happening visually. And we, of course, knew all about that before we even started working with streaming musicals. No, we didn't. Streaming musicals basically were our guides on this. And somebody's asking who the streaming company was. It's streamingmusicals.com is who we wound up working with. And I want to also go on record as saying that onthestage.com is also a really great option, a great resource for people who don't necessarily want to do a live performance. You want to do something that's recorded and streamed, which is a segue into, it's not quite, because I got Iben first.
Yeah.
All right.
Onthestage.com also do live broadcast, actually. but the setup for that was just not available to us. We didn't have the time for that, and we needed a location to do it in. So not only is it about technology, it's also about having the right technology in the right place where we, as Chris was saying, that we actually have audience that is seeing it. So it's a multifaceted issue dealing with that.
Okay, and now for a completely different point of view. Susan, tell us, because you told us very early on that you didn't want to do a live broadcast, because we're already like we're ready to offer you the studio and all this
well, yeah, and you did, and we were the problem children. We were saying no to this absolutely amazing offer, but our challenge, that we were dealing with was we had been heavily involved in casting, and we knew who we wanted. It's a 3-hander plus a stage directions, and we knew who we wanted, and who we wanted was Natasha Diaz, who is about to go into Cabaret on Broadway, but she was in Washington, D.C., and there was no way we could get people together. And we knew that whatever we did, however we captured, we knew the power of editing, and we knew we needed time. So to get our actors together with our director, we knew that the only way we could do it within our time constraints was to do it virtually. And as I mentioned, and I appreciate the comments about how Zoom flattens everything out, and you can't really capture the interaction of the actors together in the same room. But we had done virtual stuff before. I mean, early on in the pandemic, we produced a virtual reading of Stephen's play, Tracy Jones, and we learned a lot. We made a lot of mistakes, but we knew what we could get, and our constraint that we wanted to live within was we wanted to get the best cast we could, people that we knew, people who our amazing director, Farah Alvin, and Stephen, who's a very active playwright, very involved in the production of his work. So we felt badly because, Bob contacted me separately and said, I don't understand. Why don't you guys want to, well, we couldn't because of the constraint of the availability of all of our creative team. And we also felt very strongly that this was a reading, and we wanted to push the absolute edges of what a Zoom style reading could be. Now, we didn't use Zoom for the capture. We used a platform. Oh gosh, I always get it wrong. It's not Rainmaker. It's I'll remember it. There's a very specific platform where you can capture a Zoom-like meeting, but you capture it locally and then you load it up into the cloud. And it's got very good sound quality. And, again, we had used it before, so we knew it. So the variable we were taking out of the equation was something we had no familiarity with. Had we had more time, I mean, Natasha was not the only person in the world we could have cast in the role of the mother, but had we had more time, we might have thought about it differently and chosen. Yes, thank you so much, Iben. It's Riverside FM. I'm terrible with names. I'm surprised I even got any of your names right, but Riverside FM is the name of the platform. I actually use it for a podcast series that I produce. So we had familiarity with it. And so the thing that we were taking out of the equation was the things that we were unfamiliar with. And that's how we chose to do it on Zoom. And then we knew that we had to get the best editor we could. Chris Chan Roberson is literally a ninja. When I had seen the first kind of recording, I was a little, oh, is this gonna work, or is it gonna look like another Zoom call? And Chris has just done an extraordinary job I, of course, leave it to you guys to watch it on Sunday if you can, to see if you agree with me. You know, Bob had asked a question about what will the audience reaction be? And of course, we can't know yet because we don't go live until Sunday. But I'm a big fan of working within constraints because I think that's where the creativity, the creative problem solving comes in.
I don't want to spoil the surprise for a lot of you who are going to see it on Sunday, but I do want to say a couple things. In shooting it, they used flat colored backgrounds, a different color background for each of the characters, and which actually is visually very attractive. I think it's red, white, and green. No, red, white, and is it red, white, and blue? Well, it is blue.
Right, there's a blue.
And the other thing is that the frames aren't frames like what we're looking at right now. They have different, they shape and fit into the full screen in different ways depending on how many actors are on the screen. And I was particularly impressed with the tall frames, the vertical frames next to each other. It has a very nice look. The other things that are nice, your sound quality comes off really great. And I don't know, I guess you're saying that Chris was able to do in editing things that made all of the frames look so clear and clean and crisp. They all looked very good.
Well, it's not only that, but you know, Stephen has this construct in a lot of the plays that he does where you know the dialogue is very staccato, and sometimes the actors are even talking over each other. And when you record, oftentimes there's, and particularly when people are not in the same room, what happens with these things is that kind of interplay that you would get if the actors were in the same room from a sound quality perspective, even if all of your mics are great and all that sort of stuff, that ability to have that kind of, you know, really rapid fire dialogue, it's really tough. And one of the things that Chris did is in nanoseconds in between the recordings of the audio, he was able to cut those intercuts. So it's, I mean, I can't say enough about him. He's the ninja. I'm just the servant to his but I mean the whole group, it was a great experience. And I hope that it's going to resonate with our audience on Sunday.
Okay, thank you, Susan. I want to go to Joel because I've been waiting to actually ask him the question, which is as a writer, how did you feel about having your play that you wrote for stage being done in a filmed medium? And did you learn what you needed to learn from this reading? And you can be honest about it. What worked and what didn't work for you?
Well, I've
And
had
after this, I'm going to go to the questions from the room because there's tons of them.
I think this was my 7th or 8th reading that I've been involved with, not with this particular piece, but with other musicals I've written and everything. And they were very different experiences. They were with the Equity 29-hour contract, and there was no switching involved, and you know, so that was. I was just curious how it was all going to come together. It was a little bit harrowing at times, but I had a great producer in Nicolette and Sean
Yes.
as her assist, and Ben.
It's Joel Bay.
I was a little bit anxious about the rehearsal time. You know, 29 hours seems like a really clipped pace for a reading, and I think our rehearsals was coming in around total around 9 hours. So if you cut 2/3 of a 29-hour reading off of the rehearsal experience for the actors, that's what we essentially had.
So you didn't have to lose the time, but it just happened that you didn't have the time.
No, it was just
to answer one of the questions from the room. We did this whole thing with SAG-AFTRA. SAG-AFTRA have been a dream to work with. They've been wonderful. They basically, if I explained to Steve Mikey at SAG-AFTRA why we're doing what we're doing, he'll find a way for us to actually do it. And with the micro budget agreement, I'm not sure if there's a limit in terms of rehearsal. If there is, it's something like 29 or 30 hours, the same as with an equity reading. But there's a lot that's made much more available to us with SAG-AFTRA. We're allowed to shoot. We can charge, because we're a not-for-profit, not just because it's micro budget, but because we're a not-for-profit working under the micro budget agreement, and Steve understands that a not-for-profit needs to get money coming in some way. We're allowed to charge a ticket price, and we're also allowed to ask for donations. Equity puts all sorts of restrictions on that sort of thing. Because it's SAG-AFTRA, we were able to use all of the actors under the SAG-AFTRA agreement. I think that even equity actors, I don't know who was equity and who wasn't, but I think even equity actors are allowed to perform under the SAG-AFTRA. So somebody had, Nicolette, did you have your hand up before? You were going to say something?
Yeah, I was just going to say something because I saw someone ask about the budget. If that's okay. I was just going to say, for people who want to do something like this in the future, I was talking to Tom afterwards, and he said that actually it's cheaper. And Tom runs streaming musicals. He said that you can do a reading through, for example, streaming musicals, a filmed reading that will cost about approximately $10,000 less than if you did a 29-hour stage reading. And the actors will work less. They'll, you schedule when they come in for their parts, and it just ends up being a little bit easier process. And then, as a writer or as a producer, then you would send those videos out to potential investors and producers instead of doing invite everyone to a 29-hour reading. It's a good option.
So I just want to say that I do 29-hour readings with equity actors live, and I never spend $10,000. But the major costs are usually the venue, and the venue costs are comparable or maybe a little bit more if you move into the virtual presentation, if you're using streaming musicals. Tom is negotiable. I mean, you should always talk to him about what it is you need and what it is you'd like to do. And he, I'm sure, would do his best to find a way to make it affordable for you. The thing that I like, I said in my opening remarks, is basically the fact that I don't have to rent a venue. Well, you do have to rent a venue of some sort. In this case, the venue is the studio. But just the whole idea that you have streaming musical studio and you have 8 cameras available to you and amazing sound equipment is, I'm just in love with this way of doing things. I may not go back. We'll see. Back to live eventually. So the other things to bear in mind with this readings that we're doing, the way that we're doing it with SAG-AFTRA, we're allowed to stream 4 days, a maximum of 4 days after the reading. They are usually consecutive days, so it's like after the reading, you start streaming the following day. I got a concession from SAG-AFTRA. They're allowing us to do 4 non-consecutive days. As long as the total streaming is going to be 4 days for each of the pieces, we can do that in a schedule that we set up. So we're planning on doing not 4 days in a single week, but we're trying to do it like in 4 weeks, one day a week for 4 weeks, so we can actually build an audience and we can get word out and hopefully get people to show up, just like in real life, show up the last performance.
So
Joel,
I just want to add in that I didn't want what I said to be misleading, because I see a lot in the chat people talking about the unlimited rehearsal hours, and that was certainly the case for us. We just weren't able to get our cast together any more than a total of 9 hours. So
and it was all on Zoom, our rehearsals.
Yeah. So that was probably the most harrowing part of it. And I was just amazed how the difference between how the actors were able to connect to each other when they were in the same room, as opposed to when they were trying to connect to each other on Zoom. It was night and day. And it was It was just, it felt like, to me, I turned to my wife in the middle of this and I just said, I don't know what happened overnight, but something happened. And it was like, it felt like a miracle. Just in the sense how everything came together at the last moment, and a pleasant miracle at that. And I come from a television background. I'm a LA-based guy that has spent my career in TV, and I've done a lot of multi-camera producing and directing. And I thought, how is this going to come? I've never worked by the seat of my pants the way we did on this. So pleasantly surprised.
You weren't alone in thinking that. But I agree with Christopher, because Christopher is saying, like, the actors being in the room together, it's really like we saw it firsthand. It really made a difference for our show. And it ended up that some of the actors kind of knew each other already, and that was just really great. And I will also say that we did not audition any of the actors. We didn't have any time. So we basically went off reels and also just hoping the best.
And I want to top that with that once we were in the room, everybody focused on what was the purpose of being there. It was that we needed to be ready for 4 o'clock. They managed to have almost a complete run through. We didn't have any QTQ, but it was, we should have had, but because everybody stayed in their lane, and I remember I said that to Ben, and he took it.
Ben had several lanes.
Yeah, no, but he was trying to do something that had to do with the crew. And so Nicolette and I, who were both in the room, we divided it. I said, like, Nicolette, you have 10, 11 actors. You deal with those, I'll deal with the crew, and we'll make it happen. And then some gray bearded person snuck in quite sort of like 10 minutes. And we had to sort of boot him and say, can you go home?
So I went home. That was me. I wanted to say thank you to everyone. Call me crazy. So something I want to, one thing I want to say to the room. One of my greatest lessons was I learned what a switcher was. I want everybody to understand how this actually works with all these cameras. You have this technical setup where this one person is sitting and has access to all of the different cameras and pushes buttons to say which camera is going to photograph which part. And in this case, it was actually fortunate that the director, Ben Rausch, also had a lot of technical background, because he did a terrific job of switching between cameras. And as the director and really knowing the script, he knew exactly what button to push when. When 1920 was done, they had a really, really talented switcher also. Do you remember her name? What was her name, guys? I can't remember. Lauren.
Yeah. But the thing about the difference between Lauren and Ben being the switchers was that Lauren had a prior rehearsal. She could actually sit and follow the script, and while Chris was dealing with the actors, and she was able to, from her experience, of course, to say, okay, this is probably where I should change. And you had so many different cameras to choose from that it always made sense for her to be on something else when she changed. And the way we got away with Ben being the switcher was that he did direct cut, where for 1920 we had a preview, and which is what you normally have in a live broadcast in a TV studio, that you lined it up. You know what I mean, Joe, right? So you lined it up and say, okay, this looks right, and now you switch.
Yeah.
But you can't do that for theater sometimes, and especially when you haven't got any rehearsal time at all.
Don't you do a breakdown in the script to some degree, so that you have some general idea of what's going to be a close-up, what's going to be a long shot, and all that? And the other thing, Ben, not to play down Ben's genius, but Lauren had apparently 7. I thought it was 8 cameras. 7 cameras that she was switching, and she actually had 8, but she had to stop using one of them, I gather, because it wasn't working. And Ben had 4. And it was also it was set up a little bit more, simply for Rolling with the Punches, because there's one camera that was going to be the full long shot, and then there was one on stage right and one on stage left, so that would be catching things on the other side, going to the left or to the right, and those would be closer shots. And then what was the fourth one that you wound up bringing in? Do you remember?
Yeah, that was the close-up that we had for the center, right? So we had both the wide, and we had, the manned camera that was able to actually zoom in and out. Yeah.
So a lot of this really is going to depend on, for all of you in the room, it's going to really depend on somebody that's well versed in the tech part of all of this. But I encourage everybody to really, I'm not going to say don't try this at home. I'm going to say try this at home. Everybody should think about ways of doing your show in creative ways and in really polished ways for readings.
One of
The way they did Susan's play coming up is you can stretch it out and you don't need to have them in the room. So it's more flexible that way. And you can sort of almost compare to Rolling with the Punches. They just have to go with and hope what they have cast, which Nicolette did. They had cast the right people for the right parts. But both for 1920 and upcoming Un Hombre, they could prioritize getting actors that they knew were going to be really brilliant in their parts. So it's balances. I guess that's the point I want to get across.
I want to get to the questions in the room, and Jay, keep an eye out for the questions.
Can I just add something real quick here? In a multi-camera setup, ideally what you want, the best of all worlds is if you come out of the experience with what's called a line cut, which is what's switched, and then you have each of the cameras that have recorded their own thing separately, which is called an ISO. So if you make any mistakes on your line cut, you can go back and post and correct them with the isolated recordings from each of the cameras. So that's just one. It's a safeguard for when you're putting together a show.
And that would refer more to Susan's situation than to the live broadcasts that we did. Susan, did you want to actually add anything else to this conversation about the editing process? Because I actually have something else I want to say, and then I want to go to the room.
No, you go ahead, Bob.
Okay. I just want to say that this whole thing started with us doing TRU Speak, which was evenings. There were 3 or 4. I forget now. 4. This is going to be our 4th one. 3 evenings that we did, one a year, of 4 to 6, 5 to 7 short plays, and we learned as we went along with this. We had people originally photographing in isolation, and we found ways. We had great editors who wound up making things like a play with Katie Huffman. It looked like she was in the same room with the actor that she was playing with, and everybody was like amazed by it. And then when we were finally allowed to get into a situation where people could be in the rooms together, everybody was using cameras. I mean, basically phone cameras mostly, and just using their phone cameras and shooting scene by scene, shot by shot, having a shot list. So we got used to basically having people make shot lists ahead of time, so that when they came in and actually started shooting, they would have something. They would have a plan for what they were going to be shooting. Nicolette, you were involved with that when you produced Reprieve, which written by Lee Roscoe, who's in the room with us right now. So when we moved into TRU Love, TRU Voices, I've got so many TRU programs in my head. Oh my God! So when we moved from TRU Speak to TRU Voices, the first thing I kind of realized was that shooting a 90-minute play was a little bit more complicated than shooting an 8 to 12-minute short play, but I still am open to the possibility that somebody's going to do one of our TRU Voices plays shot like a real film, where it's going to have a shot list They're going to have a camera. They're going to set up the cameras. They're going to not necessarily do it in a continuous take. It's going to be scene by scene by scene. They're going to do inset shots, and they're going to edit it all together, and it's going to be like this amazing film, which is what happened with us with TruSpeak, films that were actually submitted to film festivals, and some of them have won prizes. So I just want everybody to keep aware of the full spectrum of the possibilities of using the film medium for a play. And I also want to ask the question to everybody: if it's filmed, is it still a play? That's the thing that always comes up. If it's filmed, is it still a play? I'm going to let that dangle, and I want to ask Jay to pull up the questions that are in the chat.
All
Jay?
right. Yep, some of these might have been answered. Let's see. Well, Iben just answered Sue Horowitz's question of why 8 cameras. If you want to expand on that, Iben.
One of the big differences between first Sunday and second Sunday play, i.e. 1920 and Rolling with Punches, is that we didn't have any camera operators in 1920. We may do with 8 cameras instead, means you can have them set up in before even there's anyone on stage, where with operator cameras, you can get to the point where you can start transmitting faster if they're operated, because then you don't have to run tech first, make sure that are we actually seeing people, are they walking out of the frame, or that kind of thing. So it's a puzzle, and you have to choose what's best for the situation you have.
Oh, and also let's just to state the obvious. When Tom tells you or any client coming in that you can have up to 8 cameras, it's up to you to decide how many cameras you think you need to use. The advantage of an 8-camera setup is that you cover so many different angles that it makes it much easier for the final product to have a real sense of movement to it and flow, which also depends on you being able to think through the shots in a way that would have a flow to it. So it looks like a film. And that also, I think that live broadcast answers my question of if it's filmed, is it still theater? I think the live broadcasts very much have the feeling of a play. I think that the Zoom that Susan's did also feels, it doesn't feel static. It doesn't feel static at all. It's again, it's the editing that makes it feel like it's an experience that's happening live, even though it's streamed, it's not being live broadcast. And I guess it's a question. The answer I always give to the question of if it's filmed, it's still theater, is yes. And the answer and the why is because I say it is. So basically, if you believe that what you're doing is theater, then it's theater. It's just theater. It's how you approach it. It's how you think about it. These are plays. Joel, your play was still a play, wasn't it?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
John, you have your hand up. And
I mean, I had when I was watching, of course, I'm all the way across on the other side of the country. So, but it felt like it was live. It was the actors interacting with each other, and there was no stopping, starting. It was right out there, smack dab, that visceral feeling that theater can give you.
the other thing I want to say is the script, and a theater script is different from a film script. A film script depends on so much description of detailed things that replace dialogue. You have shots that replace dialogue. We're not replacing the dialogue when we're filming a play. We're keeping the dialogue in. Sure, we can still be using inset shots, and we can still be using close-ups, and we can be using reaction shots and all that. But the script is really what we're focusing on, I think, when we're doing a filmed play. That's my humble opinion. Jay, have you found other questions?
Yeah, some of these might have been answered. I'm sorry if I missed it. Eric Rothman had a couple questions. Asks, were each of the productions on book, off book, in the same room? And also asks, were there any legal or union issues?
Okay, so I can answer for everybody. Basically, they were all on book. With Un Hombre on Sunday, you're not going to necessarily have any idea that they're on book. It doesn't look like it's on book. With Not Rolling with the Punches and with 1920, we saw the scripts, right? We actually saw the scripts. We weren't trying to hide that. And what kind of cameras did they use?
Black magic.
What was it?
Black magic cameras.
Magic.
That was for the two plays. And
No,
Susan,
no, it's the same cameras. The cameras that just took the cameras out of the studio, moved them to Pearl Studio, and then packed them up and took them home again.
Yeah, but I'm saying that for Susan, you were photographing it on a virtual app. So
Well, yeah, it was on the webcam, you know, when
Yeah.
they were using their webcams.
Yeah.
And you know, Riverside has improved dramatically in the last couple of years. It used to be that you really had to have a sophisticated mic setup, but you know, you basically can work with the mic in your laptop, in your computer. You know, my thought about is it a play if it's filmed? I have two answers to that question. Number one is when the National Theatre of Britain does HTTV broadcasts of one of their performances, it's not live, it's recorded, but they broadcast it into like movie theaters. Is that a play? Yeah, it's still a play. I mean, you're seeing a play, but the other thing that I feel about is it still a play? I mean, it's semantics to me, but the more important thing is that what we have opened up is a democratization of theater. You know, as we get more sophisticated in using these technologies, what we have the opportunity to do is to present these works to individuals who may not live in a city in which they can go to see live theater.
Or
right?
people who aren't able to actually get out of their
Well,
apartments.
Yeah. I mean, we've democratized, and all of this is storytelling, right? I mean, all these plays and certainly films, this is storytelling, and it's important storytelling, and it's important, and congratulations to TRU to enabling this. These are new pieces. They're not derivative. They're not a retelling of a Disney movie. You know, not that there's anything wrong with that, but we need to incubate new original work. And we need to get people excited about theater who may not necessarily be able to come to New York or come to even a theater in a regional theater. So yeah, I mean, is it a play if we filmed it? Maybe not, maybe yes, maybe whatever. Is it a play if it's been edited? For me, I don't care, because what I see is original work being presented to the broadest number of people that can possibly see it. And that's going to, that's going to keep the medium alive. That's my story, and I'm sticking to it.
Beautifully put, Susan. I applaud you on that.
Can I add a little bit to that? What I think is the big difference.
We have three hands raised. All right.
And I'd like to ask a question.
Is it a play? Because one of the big differences, apart from multi-camera series on TV, daytime stuff, is that we film it once, or it's transmitted once. So every play is different on the night. We just capture one of them doing it this way. Where in film, they maybe take the same scene 5 times, 10 times, and you put it together in editing.
Well, I'm going to try to get through questions and try to end this by 7 o'clock because we're way over time right now. Eric asked a lot of questions. So Eric, this platform it was played on is Vimeo. I'm not a complete fan of Vimeo. I've got some issues about it, but streaming musicals is comfortable and has a relationship with Vimeo. There are other platforms we could use. You can use whatever platform you want if you're working with streaming musicals. They can adapt. And the live stream, all 3 plays will be available on demand at a schedule that we're going to determine. Even Tom Pullum and I are going to have a conversation about it this weekend, maybe. Maybe, I'm not sure. And we'll be offering all 3 pieces on demand. Jay, what else am I missing?
Well, Lee Roscoe has her hand up.
Lee, you might as well ask your question. You have your hand up.
Yeah, can you see me? Can you hear me?
Yep, both.
Okay, I want to know about costs. How much to record? How much to which I prefer to live stream? How much for post-production editing? What type of sound and audio equipment does streaming musicals have? You've answered some of this, but I'd like more detail. Did you have a chance to block and do tech beforehand for either the live stream or the recorded?
Well, I'm the only one who knows what things cost, and I'll be honest with you that Tom gave us a very good price on it, but I think it might be $2,000 for using the studio and recording, and also it includes the editing. I think he gave me that price originally. It may have been $2,500, but again, it depends on the specific piece. You have to have a conversation with Tom and tell him exactly what you're looking for and what you need. And basically his studio is available for you, his cameras are available for you, his editing team is available for you. You may not need all of it, you may need some of it. So it's going to vary, but it's going to be like $2,000 to $2,500 probably for the studio and everything else. If I were to rent a theater, it would be $1,200 for the theater, just the theater.
Susan, how much did it cost you to do your recorded play?
I paid the bills.
Oh, I see. Okay,
they don't know what any of it costs.
I get you. So in other words, it's the same for a recorded video as it is for the live stream, because I don't want to do live stream. So, and can we get in touch with Tom? I mean, I tried to get in touch with him through a chat and nobody got back to me. So can we go through you? How do we?
Yes, just email me and I'll give you his contact.
Because I mean, I am a complete fan. I believe that film theater is theater. If it has that excitement and immediacy, it's theater. And how about the blocking before? Did any of you really have a chance to do tech and do a shot list and beforehand, or
I think Christopher did. Based on what I saw, his actors knew where they were going and what they were doing, so there was blocking.
Yeah, we blocked ahead of time, and I had an idea of what the setup was going to be. And as far as a shot list, I had one in my head, but Lauren was so fantastic that I just told her certain points of what I needed done, and I saw what she was doing, and I totally trusted her, and I said, "You have great instincts. Follow this." And so we did do blocking in advance.
But you could have done that shot. You could have done that in post. You could have had all that 8-camera footage to select from and go through it in post and say this one, that one, and that one.
Oh, definitely. But I believe so. I think that was my understanding, that each of the cameras was being separately recorded.
They are all separately recorded, but you need to have an idea about where you want to place the cameras. So that has to be some tech setup.
If you're going to take footage from 8 cameras, you're going to have to expect to spend a lot more money, because the editing, if you're taking footage from 8 cameras and then editing it in post-production, it's much more expensive. It takes a lot more time.
Okay, all right, that's helpful. Thank you.
Jay? You also had some blocking on rolling.
The only other question I have, it was from Susan Crawford. If you were using equity actors, how did you work that out?
Well, I think I already answered that. Basically,
Okay.
we weren't on an equity contract. Equity actors are allowed to perform on a SAG-AFTRA contract. If they're not, they didn't tell me they couldn't. And most of them do belong to SAG-AFTRA anyway. So it's basically they're performing on another or their other through their other union. Nicolette might know more than I do.
When casting the actors who are equity, it all depended on the casting agents. Some of the casting agents were like immediately no. And I worked with this one casting agent on 3 different people. The first one, she went back and forth with me for 2 weeks, never gave me an answer. The second person, I didn't realize it was the same casting agent, was an immediate no. The third person, the one who ended up being our lead, I believe the only reason why she did it is because our director knew her, gave her the script, and then she went to her agent and went, hey, I really want to do this. So, I mean, sometimes depending on the casting agent, it can be a little iffy because they say, oh, you only want to pay them this, and we don't know who you are. You're an unknown writer. So it kind of depends. Some of the people were very easy to cast, and then some of them, the agents were kind of being tough.
How did you handle a contract with them?
With the ones who ended up doing it?
Yeah.
I just sent them the micro budget contract that I got from Bob, and that was it. I mean, some of them, like when it came to ADA compliance, they wanted to make sure that was a thing. So I had to show them an email I had done through Pearl Studios and all of that. So yeah. And sometimes they wanted specific things that we couldn't give them because I reached out to Bob and I was like, hey, this agent wants this. He's like, we can't do that because of the micro budget. So, you know,
One of the things is very interesting. One of the requests that an agent made, in request number 1, she wanted to make absolutely sure that we were favored nations and everybody's getting paid the same thing. In item number 4 and 5, they were asking for extra things for their actor, and
I had already told them we were favored nations. It didn't matter. I had my first email. I told her all of that, but yeah.
So it's like, okay, you can pay
Nicolette,
everybody the same, but I want my actors to have this, and this. It's like, it's no longer favored nations then.
Yeah, it was above and beyond what was appropriate.
Nicolette, having to deal with all of that with a cast of 10 plus a reader. I mean, talk about children. Do not try this at home. Really amazing.
Yeah, I came home and I told my husband, I said, I was a producer, casting agent, and stage manager for this show, and probably something else I'm not even aware of. So yeah.
Yeah, you did the crafty.
Yeah.
Very
One of our actors, and I also want to say this about Vimeo, is one of our actors, because we wanted to authentically cast, and I literally found him last minute. We needed an actor who preferably was someone who stuttered. And so I Googled, because I'm like, I don't know if people like list themselves as this. And I found someone who's an advocate on like social media, is a big advocate. But one of the things on Vimeo that was kind of messed up is that people were doing thumbs up. And when he started talking and taking a long time talking, in one instance, someone did a thumbs down. And that's
that was the thumbs down.
Yeah. And
I saw that.
So I don't know if streaming musicals realized that and then turned it off afterwards. I don't know. But like if they would have read his bio, they would have found out he actually stutters. Like it just was so rude, but whatever.
It was upsetting to see that.
Yeah.
And I thought, well, maybe somebody caught it and then they turned off that ability to register a thumbs up or a thumbs down after that, because it just wasn't appropriate.
Well, it doesn't come up in the chat, it comes up on the screen.
Yeah,
That's what's insane. What the hell are they thinking?
And my hope is that if I understand there's going to be a video on demand, I'm hoping that can be taken out or removed, that thumbs down, when this young man, really talented young actor, who graced us with his, with coming to the table with just a willingness to to be there. All of our disabled actors were amazing, just amazing. They just wanted to charge forward and be with us.
Eben, that's for you. Are you going to be able to take the thumbs down, Al?
Of course.
Okay.
I did.
So
I
there.
mean, I was literally trying to follow along on my phone without any audio on because I was in the room as the acting took place right in front of me. So I didn't get the full experience on that one. I want to go back to something Eric Rothman asked at the beginning of this. He was saying that was there any if technical problems that we had? And yes, we did have some technical problems, but we overcome them. And that's the part of there has to be, I think John and Nicolette will agree to me that one of the things I kept saying to you, you cannot really do a run because we never got a QTQ on either show. We need to respect that this is technology as well as is theater. And therefore we need to have some time of setting it up. And there were times when the heads were cut off. I think that's a technology issue. But it's, you know, it's just, overall, I think we did amazing. Oh yeah, and Eric had another question. What app did we use for switching? We didn't use an app because apps are too slow. We used a hard box, basically like a sort of a simplified keyboard, and we had buttons we could, so all the cameras were connected to this keyboard, and you knew, okay, this now we go on camera 1, we go on camera 3, we know that. So, and that's displayed on a big screen in front of that keyboard.
It's now 7:02. I have to, so excuse me guys for just one moment. I'm going to say goodbye to my YouTube viewers. So everybody out there in YouTube who's sort of stumbled upon us, normally these are an hour. So if you remain with us for 90 minutes, then you must have found it interesting and useful. So I'm glad that we were able to talk about as much as we did. We do this as a community service, and we are definitely a pay what you can, and we allow people to come, and we have no problem with people coming in without paying. But we also have expenses, you know. So if you want to support us, please, out there in YouTube land or in our podcast viewers, go to TRU Donate, TRUDonate.com, TRUDonate.com, and give us whatever you can. It all helps. It really all helps. Honest to God, it does. The other thing, now that you found us, if you like what we do, we'd love to have you come and be in the room so you can actually be part of the question and answer, and you can meet the great guests that come in every week. So if you want to be invited and get the Zoom link and be here, I can make that happen, guys. I can make it happen. Just email me at trunltd@aol.com. That's trunltd@aol.com. Then I'll gladly invite you every week to come and hear the people that come in and speak about all these different things having to do with theater. I go to truonline.org, truonline.org, to find out what we have coming up. We're going to be scheduling for the next. I'm going to keep doing that. I love having the community that comes in every Friday and we do this thing. It's just amazing to me. I'm not going to stop doing it. I think I'm just going to keep doing it as long as I can. This is episode 195, I think, and looking forward to the 300th. So join us week after week, and thank you for being with us today.